Real estate is not this, sign a check and then get on a boat in Bahamas and sip champagne. That's not real estate. You bought the property. The question is, how are we going to keep it? How are we going to turn lemons into lemonade? Don't watch the news. The key to peace is focusing on what I have control over.
Hi, I'm Dalia Barsoum, and I would like to welcome you today to this episode of Streetwise Wealth. I would like to talk to three groups today. If you're in the first group, you are currently sitting on the sidelines watching the Ontario real estate market, listening to the negative news headlines, seeing prices decline in some markets, seeing rents softening in other markets, and it's scary right now. You may feel frozen and you may feel overwhelmed. You don't know if this is the best market to invest in or the worst market to invest in. And if you're in group two, you and I talk on a weekly basis, and I know that unfortunately, you may be experiencing pain right now. You may be experiencing a cash flow squeeze that hasn't recovered yet from the rate hikes. You may have experienced a loss, and you may be carrying debt that is much heavier than what you would like right now. And you may be feeling shame. You may be feeling that you've made a mistake that you will not recover from. And if you're in the third group, you're a sophisticated investor that has been around the block for quite some time. You're seeing motivated sellers. You're seeing opportunities to negotiate offers. Properties in some Ontario markets are cash flowing for the first time. This is the market you've probably been waiting for. My guest today has a message for all three of you. He has sat in every chair you're sitting in throughout his investment journey. In fact, he purchased his first property when the interest rates were significantly higher in their double digits, 20-something%. And he started to build his real estate portfolio and also got into developments in very tough markets. He was around in the 90s when the biggest market crash happened, which took a decade to recover from. And he has been so deep at some points where he's actually used his credit card cash advance to keep his mortgage afloat. Fast forward today, he's sitting here with $100 million real estate portfolio behind him, and he is an incredibly successful entrepreneur. His name is Harry James. Harry James has been building real estate in Ontario for over 40 years. He founded Harry James Financial Services in 1993 and grew it to a point where he sold it to a public company in 2007 and then turned around and poured that success straight into real estate development through Harry James Enterprises, building a portfolio that today exceeds $100 million. Harry has bought, built, and survived through every major rate and market cycle this province has ever seen, including the early 80s when the Bank of Canada pushed mortgage rates above 21%, the last decade crash of 89 to 96 when prices dropped 30% and didn't recover for over a decade, and the correction we are living through right now. Harry did all of that without a trust fund, without a rich uncle, and sometimes without enough cash in his account to cover his own mortgage. He's also the author of the upcoming book, The Shoes That Changed My Life, Finding Your Unencumbered Path, and the creator of a philosophy called Live Real, Be Real. Harry is a speaker and a co-host of Retirement is a Lie workshop. Harry James, welcome to Streetwise Wealth.
Thank you so much, Dalia. It's always a pleasure to be with you on your many ventures.
I am looking forward to our conversation today. And Harry, before we dive in, you've shared publicly and you've shared in your book that at some point you covered your mortgage payment from a credit card cash advance. Take us back to that moment. What was going through your head and how did you feel?
Well, like a loser. I was a trust officer at Canada Trust, and I could take you to the branch. I don't know if it's still there. It was a Canada Trust branch. I was driving along heading east on Finch Avenue, and my mortgage was due. My wife and I bought a condo for $1,000 down in 1984 from Lebovic out in Scarborough. And I was driving along, and my mortgage was due. I had no idea how I was going to pay it, and just popped in my head, I'll see if I can grab enough out of my credit card. I didn't know if there was enough there. And I got a cash advance to cover the mortgage. And, that wasn't unusual at that point in my life. I was tap dancing. I mean, funny enough, I've always had a good credit rating and always been able to somehow land on my feet financially. But I was actually doing something back in the 80s that might land me in jail. I hope there's a statute of limitations, but I was kiting. I didn't even know it was kiting. I had an account at CIBC, an account at Royal. I was on straight commission, and it took 5 days back in those days for a check to clear. So I'd deposit a check in Royal for $5,000 and a check in CIBC for $5,000. There actually wasn't any money, but I just had to make sure I covered one of them before the check cleared. And somehow I was able to pull that rabbit out of the hat too. It was just a time as a young entrepreneur trying to figure it out. I was making decisions. I was leaning into doing different deals and different opportunities. And it was just really just survival, basically.
Did you know that you're going to be where you are today at that moment when things were tight?
I knew I believed in myself. The cool thing about the life insurance business back in the 80s, I mean, when I was a life insurance salesman, it was laughed upon. If I wanted to clear the buffet table, I just had to tell people I sold life insurance. But the one thing about the life insurance industry, they did a spectacular job building up your confidence, weeding and feeding your mind. I sat under Zig Ziglar Live, Dennis Waitley, John Maxwell, the best speakers of the day. Because in the life insurance business, you're always January 1 back at the starting line. You might have had a good year, but you have to go out and do it all over again. So they take you to a conference and pump you up and have these speakers and try to motivate you. But there were certain things I learned back then that stuck with me. Number one, that you got to smell the roses. Time's your most important asset. And the other thing that was embedded in me when I was a young man, I was making about $23,000, $24,000 a year in 1984 when I left Canada Trust. And I remember thinking to myself, I wouldn't be earning $24,000 unless I was worth 7 times that in bottom line profit to Canada Trust. They weren't a registered charity. And I always knew that creating my own path and getting in my own business was going to be a way of creating the life and the lifestyle that I wanted. I believe strongly in that in my 20s, probably from all those speakers that I heard. And I rubbed shoulders with some pretty dynamic people that were making in a month what I made in a year. So that environment, they always say the company you keep is pretty important. That environment fueled my thinking and got me to be a much bigger thinker at that stage of my life.
That really formed a great foundation for your entrepreneurial journey, it sounds like. And you then opened up your financial planning company, if I'm correct, before you got into real estate, correct? Exactly.
I'm sitting right beside the building. In 1993, I hung a shingle. I bought a franchise called Ross Dixon Financial. And I remember distinctly, I was making $120,000 a year. At that time, I think I had 2 children. I needed $120 to live. I had no net worth, a large line of credit card debt, and I leased 900 square feet. Cost me $40,000 to renovate it. I borrowed $50,000 from a family friend, and I needed basically $6,000 a month to open a door. That was without taking anything out to pay my bills. And I'd never felt more liberated or more motivated or more encouraged in my life. It was a bizarre time, but it was an exciting time. And again, all of that training and all of the resilience, I guess I built up through the life insurance years, paid some dividends while I was on that trajectory.
Let's talk about how you started in real estate and your journey. I mean, you got into real estate with your first property at a time where rates were significantly higher compared to where they are today, right? Like 20-something%. And despite the fact that rates are much lower today, and yes, they could be going up, they're nowhere close to where they were when you started. So what made you get in despite the fact that things where the cost of money was much higher and things were tougher from that perspective? Just share with us what made you get in and what made you continue to walk down that path.
I started businesses when I was 15, photography, knocked on doors, newspapers. I joined a lot of multi-level marketing. I never was an Amway, believe it or not, but 50, and I'd go to these hotel rooms. And I mean, at the end of the day, I was just always looking for a way to better myself. And then back then, I think there's maybe 6 or 8 channels. I mean, I come from the era where you actually had to get up to change the channel. But on TV at night when I couldn't sleep, there was guys. One of them was a guy named Tom Vu. I remember he was a real estate investor, and it was him with 10 women in bikinis. So I can't remember, but he was living the life because of real estate. And there was somebody else that also was in real estate. And I thought, geez, that real estate kind of leveled the playing field. You didn't need to have an MBA or a PhD. And it seemed to be available for everybody. And I had read enough that a lot of the millionaires and billionaires in the world had done it through real estate. It was just all about, persevering and hanging in and lasting. So when my wife and I were just about to get married, there was a condo. It was a horrible market, almost similar to now. And you could buy a condo for $1,000 down. So I went and I put $1,000 down. I had no money. I think 120% of my monthly income went towards the mortgage. And that's what started it. And the funny thing is, I almost backed out. I went to see the agent. I remember his name was Terry Rowe. I went to see the agent. I said, I think I'm making a big mistake here. And these little things happen in life and they really have a big impact. He said, look, don't back out of this deal. It'll end up being one of the smartest things you could ever do. And even though I was under tremendous stress, my wife and I actually left that condo. We couldn't sell it and moved into a $350 a month basement apartment in Scarborough and then rented the condo out. And that's when the light went on. Somebody that owned a business, he owned O'Toole's in Scarborough, him and his wife. They rented from me, a guy that couldn't afford it. They rented my place. And I thought, wow, why wouldn't they just buy it? And so it occurred to me that, now I have OPM, the real OPM, other people's money renters, paying off my debt. And while my wife and I went into a basement apartment to kind of regroup. And while I was in that basement apartment, and this is the gospel truth, I bought a townhome in Unionville, just north of Toronto, with a 9-month closing date. Why a 9-month closing date? Because I didn't have any money. And I was on commission, so I figured, okay, I got to come up with $16,000, and I've got 9 months to do it. So I had a 9-month closing date on the condo. On the townhouse. My condo was rented out, and guess what happened? The market took off. You could have put me on a speaking tour. Everybody thought I was a genius. I was just purely lucky. So I had 2 pieces of real estate in my portfolio. The real estate market took off. And we ended up closing the townhome. And then, it was basically, Jesus, this works. Not easy, but it works. And that was the beginning. And yes, interest rates were very high. I mean, I used to think, boy, if you could get a mortgage below 10%, you won the lottery, buy some champagne and go out to a steak dinner. I was at 14%, 13%, 12%. Yeah, it was, and those half points made a huge difference in your cash flow when you could beat it down. But something, again, I always tell people that ask me about real estate today, they get all upset if they have to feed their real estate with cash calls. I did cash calls for 25 years. It was just like a deposit in RSP to me. I mean, I had to feed my properties because there was expenses, but I always felt that eventually I'd get it back. And sure enough, with the magic of inflation, and inflation makes every real estate investor look like a genius, even though, it's just pure economics. Over time, eventually, you're not feeding them, and they start to reward you for persevering and hanging in and just kind of following the program. And that's really what happened.
I know you've always told me pay yourself first, and some investors shy away from holding on to a property if it's negative cash flow, because obviously it adds strain in some cases, but your philosophy is different, right? I think I've heard you say it's like paying yourself in a case of a negative cash flow, and over the long run, it would recoup. Is that the approach or how you look at it?
Well, 100%. I mean, if you're a believer in real estate, a believer in bricks and mortar, and look, the cost of things is not going down, it's going up. Inflation, the cost of living. So what I find funny is that people get on this kind of plastic treadmill of doing what everybody else is doing. So they'll go out and borrow X amount of money at RSP time, some invented time by the bank, so we can all run around and get excited about eventually enjoying ourselves when we're 65. And they go out and they borrow a whole pile of cash, throw it in their RSPs to lower their net taxable income, and then they have to make a monthly payment on that loan. Well, you put, say, $15,000 in the RSP, and you're paying $1,000 or $1,200 a month towards the loan for $20,000 or $15,000 that might grow at 8 or 10%. Well, I can tie up a $300,000-$400,000 asset and feed it $1,500 a month. Now I got $400,000 growing at a good rate as opposed to just $20,000. But it also has a lot more potential in terms of what I can do with it. I can see it, I can touch it, I can change the zoning, I can get different tenants, I can add on to it, I can bring in partners. Like, there's so many things that you can do with real estate that you can't do with the traditional kind of trajectory that a lot of people go on, because they think, well, that's what everybody's doing, so that's what I should do. But if you want to live a life that most people aren't living, then you probably don't want to be mimicking what other people are doing on a regular basis. So it's just something that was always embedded in me to take the road less traveled, so to speak.
On that note, not every property, though, Harry, is going to appreciate over time. So where do you draw the line between saying, okay, I am going to feed it money because it's got long-term potential versus saying this is draining my resources? Where do you draw that line?
Well, again, funny, and this, I remember this distinctly. I never ever bought a property expecting it would go up. My criteria was simple. I buy the property, other people pay it off. So if I bought $1 million property or $500,000 property, all I wanted to know is that 20 years from now, it was paid off and all of those rents were coming to me to enhance my lifestyle income. I never counted on the properties going up. And this new thing today that everybody does, buy the property, renovate it, refi, take all your money out. That's foreign to me. I don't understand that. I leave my money in. I want as little debt as possible. And I want to make sure that ultimately it's going to be a solid asset that cash flows. So I never counted on the value of the property going up. Now, obviously they do, but as long as it's a solid property that I believe in, that's got good solid tenants or the ability to attract good solid tenants, I'm simply just putting something in my portfolio that is going to add significant value to my net worth as time goes by. Because as time goes by, the renters are paying off the debt.
Right. Okay. I know you've been through every major market in Ontario's real estate, and the correction we're going through right now is another example of that. And I see you make moves and you're investing right now. And I know in your book, you also talked about development that went sideways at some point in time. The question I have for you is, what does it feel like standing in a real estate storm? And what kept you going despite these storms that you've experienced?
Well, it's invigorating. I hated multiple offers. It was stupid. It was gambling. If everybody's doing it and you're going with the herd, there's a good chance you're going to go off a cliff. I mean, Sir John Templeton, one of the greatest equity investors ever, I had the privilege of seeing him when I was a young man in the banking business, shareholders meeting. And he said, significant wealth in life is built when you have the intestinal fortitude to jump in at the highest degree of pessimism. Now, a lot of people hear things. You can't live your life in a motivational quote. You actually have to do something. And one of the things I'm not good at everything, but one of the things I'm pretty good at is recognizing some of the things that I've learned that have become embossed truths in my life. Business is just a game. What's the worst that's going to happen? We're all going to drop dead. Time's your most important asset. If you want to accomplish things, you have to take risks. You can't play any game and not get hurt, not break an arm, not lose a tooth. So when the mortgage meltdown happened in the US in 2007, I believe, 2006, I jumped on a plane, went to Florida to the Gulf beaches and bought 7 properties. I'd never seen so many real estate signs in my life. Now, please, nobody be impressed. None of the properties were for me. I didn't have any money, but I bought them for my clients and just charged them a fee, because what I'll say to my clients is, now's the time. You'll never regret doing this. So it was honestly, people, I've never seen anything like it, but I knew when you look at history, it's cycles. And when you have the ability to recognize that those cycles are more than likely going to repeat, and you have the ability to go against the crowd, as Sir John Templeton says, you make those decisions. Maybe the gestation period to show that you're right is 7 years. Maybe it's 10 years, but eventually you will be right. And I'll say it now. We will hear a chorus of woulda, shoulda, couldas 5 to 7 years from now, like, oh, I could have done this, I should have done this. That's going to happen. We're going through a period right now where things are adjusting. And in this adjustment period, a true real estate investor, and I mean an investor, real estate's a business. It means it's hard. It means that sometimes you lose money. But a real estate investor in this type of environment is going to go out and negotiate deals that make sense. And the beauty of a true real estate investor in this environment is you have the luxury of time to do your due diligence, ask for vendor take-back mortgages, maybe do change the zoning, because you don't have 72 people at the table that are insane with some type of, greed over it's going to go up $50,000 tomorrow, clouding the issue. So it's a much better environment to negotiate in. And the other thing I always like to say to people with real estate, listen, if you're not prepared to make 10-year decisions instead of 10-minute or 10-month decisions, this business isn't for you. 10-year decisions well thought out, knowing going in that you might have to feed it, or you might go through a period where you have bad tenants. You might go through a period where interest rates may go back up. That's fine. It's part of being in business. Tell me one business, Dalia, where everything's always smooth, where you don't have issues, where you don't have employees, causing issues, or you don't have clients that are difficult to do. Tell me any business.
Once you find that business, Harry, please let me know. What's in that business?
Well, exactly. But you and I know each other. It comes down to perspective, and people lose perspective.
Yeah.
Listen, the only thing that raises a problem for me is if somebody I love is in the back of an ambulance. Other than that, entrepreneurs, no matter what business you're in, are paid to solve problems. And solvable problems are a gift from God when you're in business, because that's why you make the money that you make. And so often we see problems sideline people or create a state of inertia or basically run them out of the business because they've never overcome adversity before. There's adversity in every worthwhile path.
I want to pause here because you shared several golden nuggets, and the key ones that just resonated with me is that in business there is adversity. We're here to solve problems, and thinking and making decisions based on a longer term view, not this year, not the 6 months, not the temporary dips that are happening. So these are golden nuggets, Harry. Thank you for sharing.
Important to this is they're factual. I've got some projects now that I've been feeding money to, negative cash flow, for 5 years. I believe in these projects. They are going to do well. But in one of the projects in particular, I've got a market where the payment rate went down 60% and the costs went up. And so, now what do? Do you just shut it down and run for the hills? Or do you navigate and see it through and get through to the other end? And we choose to try to navigate and get through to the other end, as long as the fundamentals we feel on a long-term basis are going to be there for it to make sense.
I know you talk about the staying in power and the importance of staying in power. And I believe you had a mentor at some point. His name was Ken.
Ken Fowler built Red Leaves, Springs Hotels. He was a fabulous entrepreneur, just a super human being. I had the privilege of interviewing him. Actually, Ken Fowler, Harry James interview, I think, is on YouTube. And he was just a prince of a man and just filled with golden nuggets. And one of his favorite things was the key to real estate is staying power. And, today, that's the key to real estate, staying power. And people might be watching, might say, well, but Harry, I don't have money. Well, neither do I.
That was my question. If they don't have money and they're they really need to sell for liquidity, what's the definition practically in power here?
They don't need to sell, Dalia. They don't need to sell. I've been in this situation many times in my life. As a matter of fact, I bought a 32-acre farm that the 407 was going to go through in Bowmanville. Instead of selling, I brought in 3 people. And I said, look, I'm going to give you it at my cost. I'll manage it. This is why this is going to go well. And, everybody comes in and we're shoulder to shoulder. So 25% of something is better than 100% of nothing. Bring somebody in. If you can't handle negative cash flow, let's say it's costing you $1,000 a month. You go to somebody that you respect, is always wanting to get involved in real estate, doesn't have the acumen to do that or the time. You say, look, if you will pick up $500 per month of my negative cash flow, I'll give you 50% of this deal or 30% of this deal, whatever it is. And here's the business case why I think this is going to be very good for you. In other words, we look at things too one-dimensionally. There's so many different ways to solve a problem. And unfortunately, one of the things I truly believe that's lacking with a lot of, especially young entrepreneurs today, is resilience, the ability to just keep going, last, and come up with different ways. Maybe you go over the rock, or you go under the rock, or you go around the rock, or you hire a crane, but there's a way. A book I read recently was The Obstacle is the Way. Lean into the problem, lean into the issue, put it on the table, get big spotlights and shine it down, and go for a walk thinking about that problem. And it's amazing, different ideas will come to you. Do you know somebody that's always wanted to get in real estate? Do you know somebody that's wealthy? Do you know somebody that's always wanted to build their own house? Whatever it might be, the solution is there. Because if you don't come up with a solution, guess what? Somebody else is going to come along, buy it, and they'll be the one making the money that you should have made.
What do you feel holds some people back from finding creative solutions like the one you just talked about? The immediate thing that comes to mind sometimes if someone is experiencing distress is, okay, I just want to sell. But here you are sharing an idea where you can bring in an equity partner and you own a percentage of an asset versus the full asset. That is so super creative. What do you think holds people back from being able to see different angles to a solution?
Well, if people have hung in this long to listen to this whack job, Harry James, you could probably shut it off after I make this point. I truly believe it's perspective and resilience. And I've had the privilege of hearing a lot of great speakers. I'm a big reader. I've been trying to weed and feed my mind since I was a young man. And there's a book that probably most leaders that I have studied have mentioned, and it's Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. That book has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with business. But that book has everything to do with life and how you put things in perspective and how you can garner up the will and resilience and the perseverance and the perspective to accomplish what you want in life. Because too many people, what you think about gets bigger. What you dwell on gets bigger. And people take this game of money and business and real estate way too seriously. It's just a game. It really is. And when you have that perspective, and I encourage anybody that hasn't read that book to read it, a lot of people have no idea why they're doing what they're doing, what they want out of life. When you have an emotional attachment to the outcome that means something to you, you garner up the perseverance and the discipline to keep going no matter what. But when you're missing that emotional attachment to the outcome, you give up, you watch Netflix, you say this isn't for me, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I missed out on all the opportunities because the outcome isn't important to you. You know, what another way I like to say it is that if you can live without it, it's not a goal. So, you know, the funny thing is a lot of people are doing stuff, but they don't know why they're doing it. The real estate should be a vehicle to get you somewhere, or your, you know, Bitcoin business, or your, you know, group of gyms, or your restaurants. It's a vehicle to live this thing we call life, to create experiences with our family and give back to the community and leave the world maybe a better place because we're all just passing through. And if you don't have that attachment to making some type of contribution beyond yourself, then I think you really don't garner up the discipline to keep going when things are bad. And trust me, no matter what you're doing, at some point they'll get bad. And then they'll get good, and then they'll get bad, and then they'll get. So how do you ride those up and down? Something called perspective. And perspective and experience builds up resilience, and resilience is the key ingredient, I believe, to accomplish anything in life that's worthwhile.
This is on resilience. This is a quote that you wrote in your book that I want to share with our viewers here because I think it is incredibly valuable. And I actually framed it in my office to remind myself of this every day. And you say, your passion, vision for whatever you want in life has to be so white hot that it fuels your desire to the point you will overcome your fears and create the discipline to do whatever is necessary, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how embarrassing or humiliating, to achieve your goal. I love this so much because that's a great reminder every day when we are in a tough spot. If we want it bad enough, like you say, we will find a way.
Thank you, Dalia. And you know what? And I think what's important, so many people look at somebody like yourself and they say, wow, but she doesn't know my life and the stuff I've gone through. I've been embarrassed. I've been humiliated. I've made some horrible mistakes. I've felt like a loser. I felt like a loser sometimes with the banks, with accountants, with other people that are successful, because as human beings, what we do is we tend to compare and we think, well, they must have it easier than us. And the reality is the only thing that separates you and the person that you're trying to emulate is some definitive decisions and a little bit of time. And yes, those definitive decisions come with trepidation, fear, anxiety, embarrassment, humiliation. But as long as the outcome is bigger than the pain, you'll persevere and you'll do it. And it doesn't matter if it's real estate or whatever. But my goodness, you know, life is so fast. It's just, you know, all of the money in the world doesn't buy you 60 seconds if you're dying at the hospital. It doesn't matter. If we can have that perspective when we're jumping in and doing things, I think you'd have a lot more fun, but you'd also take a lot more risks because your attitude would be, what's the worst that's going to happen? You know, the worst that's going to happen. And if the worst does happen, you're going to get something called wisdom. I got my black belt in failures. I have many of them. I'm thinking of starting a black belt in failure gym. I mean, I've got a lot of failures. And from each and every one of those, I think I've been able to glean something that's helped me out in the next journey that I've went on.
That's where your wisdom comes from. It's from real experience and persevering through all of these hurdles. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. On mindset, Harry, this is another book you've shared with me over time, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And I know you've read this book many, many times, and it had great influence on your mindset. And you've invited me to read it and reread it and highlight it and underline it and reread it. And I know why. So talking about your mindset, you've built $100 million real estate portfolio over the 40 years. And what I want to ask you is, what are some of the non-negotiables for Harry James when it comes to making decisions about real estate, regardless of what the market is doing, regardless of what people are saying? What are some principles and non-negotiables that you use as a thinking model that never change or are your commandments per se at this point?
Well, just getting back to the book for a moment, I think one of the things that anybody in the personal development business agrees with is a quote, "A man without a vision will perish." You need to have a vision, and you need to feel worthy of that vision. So there needs to be work done in the person in the mirror, because if we don't believe that we're worthy of what we're seeking, we will subliminally sabotage it. And the reason I mention that is so important, because it's a top-down game. If you don't have the proper mindset, if you don't have the belief, the conviction, or you don't feel you're worthy of whatever it is you're pursuing, you can just stop whatever you're doing and go to dinner, because nothing else will happen. You will just be your own worst enemy. That's why I'm such a fan. The reason I can tell you to, and this is straight from Bob Proctor, and everything I'm saying, by the way, I've stolen it from somebody or read somewhere. But most people go to workshops, seminars, and read books purely as entertainment. That's useless. Okay, there's a million books on how to be, in great shape, and we have an epidemic of people that are out of shape. There's too much information, not enough execution. When you study a book, when you repeat it, when you chew on the gold nuggets, when you make them part of your DNA, when you emboss them on your brain, you're actually changing. You're baking a new cake on your paradigm, the way that you view the world. And that only comes from repetition. Otherwise, you're just going to revert back, because you're the same person, a year from now, with the exception of the books you read, the people you meet. You're a culmination of your upbringing, your school, your religion, your experiences. The only way to change that is with repetition, which is why I asked you to read that book 72 times. Getting back to real estate, the non-negotiables for me, they changed. Okay, so at my age and stage of life, I'm going to be 65 next month. It's a different criteria than when I was 35. But I look at every deal based on, is there value? Can I create value? It doesn't matter to me if interest rates are 14% or 3%. I've created deals with value at 14%. It's just running the numbers. It just has to make sense. So is there value? Do I believe in the project? Is it something that you've seen some of our portfolio? This will sound a little silly, but for us, it's almost like art. Am I creating something that's going to contribute to the community? Am I contributing something where people are going to be able to create great memories with their families, or walk with their dogs, or enjoy a nice meal? Would I live there? Would I let my daughter live there? So, and then the byproduct is, are we going to do okay? Are we going to make some money? And is it going to eventually cash flow? So there's basically a gut feel that I believe too many of us ignore. It tells me whether or not the person I'm dealing with, the property I'm looking at, the environment that I'm in, does it line up and give me the criteria that I need to create something that is a part of the Harry James Enterprises philosophy. And that's basically it. It's just not that complicated, the way that we do things.
I've seen your portfolio. I've walked through some of your properties, and like you said, they are art. You focus on the clients, that you don't even call them tenants. They're clients. You want them to enjoy where they're living. You want to show them value. And it all comes back to you as a business owner, because if you care to the extent you care about the people you're serving, things grow and flourish. And I find that to be an incredible philosophy versus, I am going to buy this property and I'm just focused on the cash flow and I want to make sure that it returns an ROI of X. Don't get me wrong. ROI is important. Cash flow is important. Of course, we have to make informed business decisions, but I think, and the diligence is important, but I've seen you focus on the giving aspect of owning real estate and the difference it makes in other people's life and creating something you're proud of. And I took that as a lesson for myself as well.
Yeah, I think, and it might sound a little airy-fairy and it's probably not everybody's cup of tea, but for a lot of the business we've been in, and we've been in a number, money is a byproduct of doing the right thing and doing something we believe in and doing something we can stand behind. And, I hope my son doesn't mind me mentioning this, but he's got an unwritten way that they operate. It's an internal thing. And he's got a beautiful neon sign in his office, and it says people over profits. It's doing the right thing. And, again, going back to some of the most, I think, success has a much broader definition for me, but I'm talking about people that have had impact, done the right things, so on. But the most successful people, again, I think most of them agree that generosity and gratitude are two key cornerstones of success in life. And it's interesting, I tell my kids this when they're growing up: you pursue money, it will elude you. You pursue power, it will elude you. If you're pursuing those things for the wrong reasons, you just have a life of just, a plastic treadmill running. It's empty. But I think when you pursue things with a purity of motive, and money and lifestyle as a byproduct, as long as you're doing something you believe in, it's a much more satisfying journey. So we could have made a lot more money. For example, if any of your viewers go on our website and they look at our development in Coburg, one of the first ones we did, we built luxury townhomes on the water overlooking the marina. Well, we would have made a lot more money if we would have built a big building with multiple units. I mean, it's just economies of scale. We didn't do that. And I'm glad we didn't do that. But people come in the summertime and they are literally taking pictures of our project. And it contributes to the landscape. It contributes to the beach town. It contributes to the vibe. We're proud of that. And, sort of to feel proud of it and makes a little bit less money is good with us.
I want to pause for a moment here and mention to our viewers that you were generous to share a chapter of your upcoming book. It's called the Live Your Definition of Success. And for everybody who's watching, it talks about a lot of what Harry shared today and more. So you can access it and download it and read it in the Streetwise Vault right now for free. And you can find the link to the vault in the description of today's episode. Harry, you've talked at some point about the deathbed mentality, and you shared a little bit about this in your book. So I want to take our conversation deeper. Tell me about the time you were driving on the 401 and you had 4 young kids in the car and you were running your businesses, and then the doctor called you to share news about your wife. Tell me about what happened and how that changed your perspective with respect to success and living and how you make a decision in life.
Yeah, I was actually, at that point, we had 3 children, and I was on my way to work. And my wife and I had both gone for executive medicals about a year earlier. And our family doctor called and said, I can't get a hold of Lynn, but what are we going to do about these grapefruit-sized tumors that she's dealing with? And I said, pardon? She says, yeah, the outfit that you went for your physicals, they somehow got lost and they just landed on my desk. And they need to be dealt with, and you got to go see a surgeon. And anyways, it's kind of a blur. It's kind of a call just out of the blue. And obviously Lynn was really kind of shaken up. So that night we ended up being in the doctor's office. She waited for us because it was the same lady, the beautiful lady, delivered our kids. And we're having this conversation. It's one of those conversations you barely remember because you're almost in a little bit of shock. But yeah, it could be cancer, and we have to have the oncologist there. And I don't know when they'll get you in for surgery. We won't know if it's cancer until we do the surgery. And then your whole life changes. Nothing else matters. This quote has been going around. Everybody's heard it. When you wake up in the morning, you have 1,000 problems. When you wake up in the morning and you're healthy, you have 1,000 problems. When you wake up in the morning, you have a health problem, you've got 1 problem. That's why I said to you, solvable problems really are a gift, and we lose perspective. But that kind of slammed our life on hold, and now you're just going through the motions. You're acting because you're thinking, well, until this is dealt with, what else matters? What do we care? What we're saving for, or what vacation we're going to. This is life. Is my wife going to be here to raise my children? I mean, your mind plays tricks on you, right? You're not going, oh, everything's going to be fine. You go to the worst case scenario. So it was a very, very difficult time. And I don't remember the length of time. It was forever as far as I'm concerned. And Lynn got in for surgery. It was about a 3.5-hour surgery. I remember sitting in the waiting room. And after 3.5 hours, the doctor came walking down the hallway. She's literally covered in blood all over her gown. But she had a big smile on her face. And she yelled out to me, Harry, no cancer. Happiest day of my life. We hugged, we cried. Yeah. So when you deal with something like that, I don't wish it on anybody, and it all worked out very well. But the rest is just a game. I lose $1 million, I can make it back up. have a fire and a flood, which I had this last couple of months. I can fix that. Somebody's not paying rent for 7 months. I've got that right now too. I can fix that because I have the strength and the courage and my family and, the stuff that matters most fuels my soul. But then I can put on my equipment, jump in the game every day, and I can play to win. And play to win, not play not to lose. And I play to win because I'm gonna die. I don't want to just be safe. I'd rather die playing in the game than being safe in a blanket up in the stands. I want to be in the game. If I have to lose a tooth, I'll lose a tooth. If I have to break a leg, I'll break a leg. But I can do that because the stuff that matters most is great. I think about my 6 grandchildren. I think about my wife. I think about my 94-year-old mother who's healthy and vibrant. These things fuel my soul. And I know they're not all going to last forever, but a problem for me has a very specific definition, and it has absolutely nothing to do with money or business. If I wake up in the morning and I have the energy to jump in the game and play, I'm incredibly thankful. I'm incredibly thankful for the problems. I'm incredibly thankful for the jerk banker. I'm incredibly thankful for the people that are bringing me stuff that I have to use my talents, my background, my education, my wisdom, my experience to fix, because that's the game I'm playing and I'm enjoying every moment of it, good and bad.
Yeah, and I've seen you walk this talk, and there were days where I would call you here and say, Harry, I have a problem. And you say, Dalia, this is a solvable problem. You're healthy, your family's healthy, change your perspective. And that is a game changer. That's a game changer. So thank you for that. I wish I could take your 40 years of knowledge and experience and distill it into teachings and practical tools for our audience. But what we're going to do now is we're going to distill some of it into tools that they can practically implement. So for someone right now, Harry, who's experiencing pain in this market, they got hit, they're feeling shame, they're under pressure. What is the one thing that you advise them to do immediately or consider actioning this week?
So it's counterintuitive. It's like a salmon swimming upstream. Slam on the brakes, cancel all your appointments. Bring all the problems, the challenges, the what's causing you to lose sleep, what's causing the most stress, and put it on the table. And then shine a big spotlight down upon it and really itemize how bad it is. And, it could be you're about to go bankrupt. It could be you can't pay somebody that you love. It could be the bank's going to call a loan, whatever the problem is. Recognize once you look at the problem that the only way you're going to solve it is by taking care of the person in the mirror. You can't have the problem. This is the problem, but you can't have the problem affect your health. If you have this problem affect your health, now you've doubled up on the problem. Have it affected relationship with your spouse, you've tripled up on the problem. If the problem has you drinking too much or eating too much or whatever, again, you have to separate the problem. This is the game. This is your job or this is your business. But then there's your real life. And your real life has nothing to do with it. Your real life is the person in the mirror, your spouse, your kids, your parents, your brother, whoever you might be close to, because that's where you're going to get the fuel and the clarity and the support to navigate the problem. So it's counterintuitive. You're saying, Harry, okay, I've got this big problem over here. Are you suggesting I go for a walk in the woods for an hour? Yes. Are you suggesting I go for a workout? Yes. Are you suggesting maybe I should sit down and talk to somebody and open up to them and have a good cry? Yes. Because you need to do that in order to have the strength and the emotional stability to get back in the game that you're losing 12-0, to try to do something to bring some type of positive contribution towards what it is you're trying to accomplish. And you can't do that if you are a watered down, tired version of yourself that lacks self-esteem, self-confidence, you have negative self-talk. That's just going to compound whatever it is you're dealing with. So once you take the time to really, and whatever it might be, it could be you need to go to the doctor for a quick checkup. It could be, as I said, talking to a close friend, but then go back and then get somebody that you trust, that you respect, that has experience navigating these types of issues. Give them full disclosure and get some advice, get a second opinion. Because we often, when we're in the midst of it, we can't see stuff that other people can see. We can't see other opportunities. I've had people come to me with these kind of problems and, they don't realize sometimes the problem is the way. The obstacle is the way. I've seen these kind of problems, especially with real estate. I say, well, listen, if we can borrow $50,000 and put in a basement apartment, do you realize it will generate $2,500 a month and you only need $1,000 a month to pay for the $50,000? And they look at me like I have two heads. I've done that. Sometimes I've done another real estate deal to solve the real estate deal that I have the big problem with. And it might sound crazy, and I realize it might not be conventional, but it actually works.
I want to pause this statement. You've done another real estate deal to solve the real estate deal that had an issue. So the majority would look at the real estate deal that has an issue and they're poking at it and thinking about it and obsessing over it. But you're looking here, creating a new real estate deal to solve the issue here. That is
what you focus on gets bigger. So if I keep focusing on the problem, it gets bigger. I need to focus on a solution. So if I got a negative cash flow problem and I can focus on a solution where I can buy positive cash flow or create positive cash flow, then what happens? What you're doing really is dollar cost averaging down on the problem. I got a good one over here, a bad one over here. I bring them together and it's a much better scenario. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's doable. But again, what does this boil down to? It's perspective. This is what I see people do all the time, Dalia, and I'm sure you do too. Dwell on the problem. Dwell on the problem. Focus on the problem. Talk about the problem. Go to bed with the problem. Wake up with the problem. Have the same conversations with yourself over and over, hoping that somehow the problem is going to go away through some magical circumstances. It doesn't. You've got to create the circumstances, and you have to, it's like working out when you feel like it the most. You do it the most when you feel like it the least. When you're mired in these types of issues, feeling that you're going to be up and optimistic and start looking for a deal is not probably the first thing on your mind. You're in defense. You're trying to survive, but you're either progressing or regressing. When you get into survival mode, you're regressing. And it's just getting worse and worse. And momentum starts to go the wrong way. Stabilize the problem. Stabilize it. Stop it from sliding. Somehow, some way. Put your ego on the shelf. Ask for advice. Listen, I don't know any entrepreneur that hasn't been kicked in the head. I don't know how many times. And I'll tell you, I've had some great people I've gone to in my life and said, listen, I need some advice here. No one's ever said no. No one's ever said, Harry, you're an idiot. How could you get yourself in that position? No one ever, not once. Generally speaking, human beings like helping out other human beings. Human beings don't like seeing other people hurting, financially or otherwise. That person with that problem, I know they might be physically with their kids, but they're not mentally with their kids. It's robbing their most important asset. Life is tough enough to navigate without compounding problems. So getting it out on the table, slamming on the brakes, shining down on it, and starting to take micro steps to head it in the right direction. It's just one little step. On top of one little step, it could be a phone call that creates encouragement. You get a little bit of motivation, and then another phone call, and then an idea, and all of a sudden you're starting to kind of climb out of the hole. But again, it's a big head game. It's very, very important what mindset you take into, because a lot of people have victim mentality. How will I ever get out of this? It's ruining my life. I'll never make it back. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. Regrets. Shouldn't have bought the property. I hear a lot of people saying I shouldn't have bought the property.
Yeah, I'm hearing that right now.
I don't know if you've got a time machine. I don't have a time machine. That serves nothing. You bought the property. The question is, how are we going to keep it? How are we going to turn lemons into lemonade? Okay. And again, if you have a long-term view, 10 years, again, believe it or not, I'm looking for my next 10 years to be the best 10 years yet. I truly believe that. Most people are younger than me right now. So they have lots of time. The people that are coming in with these issues are they're new to the real estate game over the last 5-10 years, lots of time, but they want to solve it in 5 weeks instead of 5 years. I've solved some business problems, Dalia, that took me, honestly, 5-6 years of navigating to eventually get to the point where I want to be. I would rather it would have been 5 or 6 months, but that's just not reality. Some of the problems that some of our friends and clients are in today are going to take a few years to fix.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes. What would you tell the person who's watching us right now, who's sitting on the sidelines and is overwhelmed by the news, having seen pretty much every market in Ontario?
Don't watch the news. I don't. I mean, I've learned the key to peace is focusing on what I have control over. I don't have any control whatsoever over what's going on in the world. I don't have any control over a lot of the things that are happening in politics. I've got my little ecosystem in my life. I'm trying to leave people better than I found them. I'm trying to create opportunities for the people I care about. I'm trying to serve and serve people well that I have the privilege of serving. And then I have the ability, thankfully, to try to take care of myself mentally, physically, spiritually. I have the ability to nurture my relationships, my inner circle relationships that fuel my soul. And the other thing is too, for those people sitting there feeling sorry for themselves, one of the best ways to get out of that is pick up the phone and find somebody that's hurting a lot more than you and go help them. because that really is medicine for the soul. You know, I was having dinner with my wife on Friday night, and we got a text from a beautiful couple we were close friends with 15 years ago. The gentleman's only 68, 69 years old, and he's in his third year in Alzheimer's. That's devastating. That's very, very, very sad. And when I heard that, you know, from all the things that you and I've talked about and what I'm talking to you about today, I feel like an idiot if I was worrying about something in business. I feel like an idiot if I was worrying about a stupid nickel and dime item, because it quickly brings me back to my deathbed mentality and perspective and what really truly matters in life. That poor person is navigating that chapter, and it's got to be very, 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 very difficult.
Yeah. What would you tell the investor who is opportunistic in this market? What would you invite them to do?
Well, you know, anybody that's looking for opportunities in this market, I was talking to somebody yesterday that's bought 4 or 5 properties in the last couple of years. I never want to see anybody hurting. I don't like to benefit by somebody else, you know, losing. I don't think that's a good business model. But the reality is the market is cyclical. So, you know, I've had a few people come to me and offer me their condos and offer me their $200,000 deposits that they're losing. And I frankly don't have any interest in that and didn't do that. But you know, the truth is in this market, you could be helping somebody by helping them get out of a deal they've committed to that they can't close, you know? So they're not going to pave downtown Toronto. Condos in Toronto are going to be very valuable in the next 10 or 15 years, very valuable. So if you've got the wherewithal and you're looking to get into real estate and you've never been in it before, that's the softest underbelly, I think, is condos in downtown Toronto. I think that would be a great idea. There's a lot of people say condos aren't a great investment. Well, you know what? If it doubles in the next 7 years, it's not bad. There's so many opportunities right now. There's so much for sale. Those that haven't bought their first house yet, I'm a big fan. I rented a basement apartment in my house until I was in my late 40s. Fabulous way of getting in the market. They're being much friendlier with basement apartments and in-law suites and stuff. Find a nice duplex. Find a really nice home that you can add a basement apartment to or a garden suite to. Incredible opportunity. You know, so I could go on and on and on. I mean, I've always been a real estate junkie. Some people remember the Toronto Star when I was a kid. It's 15 feet thick, and the biggest section was real estate, and I spent a lot of time in there. Well, now you just hop on the internet and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of opportunities. And then some of the best deals don't make it out of real estate agents' briefcases. Pick up the phone, go see your accountant, go see your lawyer. Hey, I'm looking for an opportunity. Do you know anybody that's got something? Go see a real estate agent. Hey, if you've got a listing coming up you think I might be interested in, before you list it, can you give me a shout? It all comes down to activity, but so many opportunities. But before you look for opportunities, know what your criteria is. Know what you can afford. Know what you're comfortable is. Know what your risk tolerance is, and know that you're getting into a business. Real estate is not this, sign a check and then get on a boat in Bahamas and sip champagne. That's not real estate.
No, it's not. I thought it's about sipping champagne.
It's a tough business like any other. It's a fun business with lots of different moving parts. But people, in my opinion, especially the last 10, 15 years, have oversimplified and oversold the real estate investing journey. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people get hurt as a result.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing these messages with our viewers. One thing that I am noticing is a common thread in everything that you're sharing is really mindset and the stories that sometimes we tell ourselves. Yes, the circumstances are their circumstances, the market is the market, but what story are we telling ourselves? What's our mindset to see opportunities or to stay resilient? So that's my observation, that there is a common thread in everything you've shared today. And that's a big takeaway. I want to remind you guys that Terry is generously sharing a chapter of his upcoming book about success. It's called Live Your Definition of Success. You can find it on the Streetwise Vault, and it's for free. And you can download it through the link in the description. Harry, I have some last questions for you. The first one is, if you were to go back to the version of yourself that was paying a mortgage with the credit card cash advance, and the version I think you said in your book you felt like a fraud, what would you tell that Harry, given where you are today?
Well, do it again. You know, I don't regret doing it. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this in my book or not, but you know, I see a lot of people on Instagram, TV, on books. Don't start a business till you have 6 months of savings in the bank. Don't use credit cards. Pay off your credit cards in full every single month. Don't do this. Don't do that. It's almost like they're speaking down from up on high to the masses. and the masses are sitting there trying, how do I buy my groceries? I would do it again. Listen, if I can make 30%, then if I have to pay 22% to make the 30%, I will. And so I had credit card debt for probably the better part of 20, 25 years every month. It supplemented, raising 4 kids. I took my family down on vacations on my credit card every year. Why? Because the time I would never get back. I can afford it now. My son's 38. He's upstairs. If I went up and said, hey, Justin, I can afford to take you to Florida now. Get in the car. He said, Dad, have you lost your mind? I needed to do that when he was 4. And I always figured I could make the money later, the time I'll never get back. And I've lived my whole life that way. So I've never, ever regretted the cash advances. Now, I didn't kite on purpose. I wouldn't break the law on purpose, but everything I've done, I would do again or do probably differently depending on what the circumstances were, because every generation and every decade has got different things that you can do to take the road less traveled. But you can build a great business and a great life without having money. You can, but you need to know why. And you have to be emotionally attached to the outcome and the life you're trying to build. And that magical white hot desire creates creative thoughts, brings people into your life, brings books into your life, brings videos into your life where you can start to make the steps to make it happen. Creating value where no value exists is what entrepreneurs do. It's easy for anybody to say, oh, you want me to make $2 million? Give me $1 million. Well, that's easy. But to create $1 million or 10 million or 20 million out of nothing, that's what entrepreneurs and creative people that believe in themselves do. Start with the person in the mirror, invest in yourself, but there's always a way. I truly believe that there's always a way. And I still believe the best opportunities are going to be in the future. They aren't in the past.
So I was listening to you talking about time, Harry, a message just crossed my mind. I am in financing, obviously, and I think you can refinance your real estate portfolio, but time as an asset, you can't refinance.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's true. And I'll tell you, there's lots of things I've done wrong, and there's lots of things that, I'm not proud of particularly, but the one thing that I do feel very good about is as I brought up and was building our businesses and our real estate portfolio, I was at the dinner table most nights at 5:00. Maybe I had to go back out at 7, but I wanted to be there to see my kids before they went to bed. And every year we went on vacation. And I coached every single hockey team, soccer team, basketball team, synchronized swimming, and I was at every school play. That's one of the things that drove me. I wanted to be self-employed because I wanted to control my time. I didn't want somebody else to control it. And yes, when I did those things, did I have to maybe work harder or work on the weekend or work at night? Yes. But one of the greatest dividends at this age and stage in my life is the relationship I have with my adult children. And when adult children hang with you because they like you, not out of guilt and obligation, that's one of the greatest accomplishments for me that I believe that I've got over the finish line in my life. Now, my kids might watch this and say, Dad, you got it wrong. I think you're a Looney Tune. I only come up to feel out of guilt. But no, I think the truth is people say, make sure you spend quality time. Quality time comes from quantity time when you're building a family. You can't legislate quality time. Those magic gold nuggets, those moments, those conversations, those comments, they come from logging quantity time. And when you drive 36 hours down to Florida with 4 kids fighting in the back of the car, the gold nuggets pop up and it's worth every penny of the 26% I paid on my MasterCard.
Yeah, that's priceless. That's priceless. Harry, if our viewers want to get deeper into your world, how can they find you?
Well, I'm on Instagram. My daughter did little Instagrams called Harry James Live Real. You can get me through the unencumbered website, unencumberedpath.com, where we're going to be having the book, as well as my website, harryjamesenterprises.com, that features a number of the businesses we've been in, our portfolio, as well as probably most importantly, some of my failures and I highlight why I failed, how I failed, and what I learned from it. And some people that have gone on my website find that refreshing.
Wonderful. And we're going to share that in the description of the video as well, and in the Streetwise Vault. Harry, I want to thank you for being here with us today. And in particular, I want to thank you for your vulnerability and being open. You could have easily come here and boasted about your $100 million real estate portfolio and the number of doors that you have, and just highlighted what's called the highlight reel, but you didn't. You shared an authentic journey with us and lots of wisdom and golden nuggets. So I'm very grateful for you being here with us today.
Well, listen, can I just add to that, Dalia? And it's something I live by. Ownership truly is an illusion. We are going to die. That's the fact. You don't own anything. We just temporarily manage stuff. And when you recognize that you just temporarily manage stuff, I just don't think you take it as seriously. It doesn't mean that you don't work hard to be proficient at your craft, but life's just a little blip. And I just think we'd all do ourselves a big favor by taking a deep breath and being thankful for the mundane, being thankful for that little cup of tea with your friend, and being thankful for the challenges that you have, that you're alive and healthy, that you get to try to overcome. It's the process that counts, not the destination. It's the process. And the process of getting up and just living the everyday life is the gift that we all have that we want to squeeze the most out of.
Thank you for sharing that. Here's what I want you all to take from today's episode with Harry James. If you're an investor who's in pain right now, here is Harry. He's been in your seat. He's got a large portfolio and success behind him. Don't feel that the storm you're in right now is the end of your story. Focus on your mindset, talk to somebody, get a second opinion, and you will rise out of it. And yes, it's going to take persistence and it's going to take determination. And like Harry said, there is always a way if you want it bad enough. And for those of you who are sitting on the sidelines, listening to the negative news, please do not crowd your judgment and visibility. And just think about, again, Harry building his wealth in an era where interest rates were super high in different market cycles. This is the time to actually enter the market and make a first step. And yes, lean on people to help you make an informed decision and don't get held back by fear. And for those of you who are building wealth as we speak and see this market as an opportunity, to Harry's point, add value, create cash flow. But what you've heard from Harry today validates what you already know. I want to thank you for being with us today. Don't forget to access the Streetwise Vault for Harry's chapter. And if you found value in this episode, hit the like button, subscribe, and be of service to somebody else and share it. And I'll see you in the next episode.